Kemper was an absolutely terrifying serial killer, if not for his stature alone. Dude was literally 6'9" and over 300 pounds. Like, seriously, look at this dude. If he got rowdy, what the hell are these guys gonna do about it? Nothing. So that's the thing that made him scary, was his mere size. There is no fighting this man off. But in addition to that, he also literally had a genius level IQ of 145. So unlike Bundy, Kemper had, like, the childhood that you would expect of a serial killer. His mother and father were physically and verbally abusive towards him. They just put him down a lot. Like, there was an instance where his mom made him kill his pet chicken and then his dad made him eat it. Just terrible stuff. And he started showing some pretty disturbing signs pretty early on, but shocking, his parents didn't even notice or care. And it got to the point that when Ed was 15 years old, he killed his grandparents. And his reasoning was that he said he wanted to know what it felt like. If I remember correctly, he killed his grandfather first, and then he killed his grandmother when he came home because, according to him, he didn't want his grandmother to see her husband dead. So after that, he spent 5 years in a mental hospital for treatment, and then they let him go. I think the reason they let him go is because, again, this dude was literally a genius, and he was a master manipulator. So I think he learned to tell the doctors what they wanted to hear. And he convinced them that he was normal and totally ready to enter society. So Kemper's mom worked at the University of Southern California, and he would use, like, her university sticker to make it seem like he belonged. And in 1970, college kids start going missing, and that's how Ed got the name the Co-Ed Killer. And then body parts start showing up. Never full bodies. And it was later found out that he would use his victims' heads to, Also admitted to cannibalism later on. So the other scary part about Kemper is because he was so charming, he frequented this bar that the local police hung out at, and they loved him. They were like best friends. And he got them to disclose information about the case, and they actually gave him a pair of handcuffs and a fake badge that looked incredibly real. Absolutely fucking wild. So at this point, Kemper's kill count, he's killed his 2 grandparents and he's killed 6 women. And then Kemper has this glaring realization that the reason he's doing this is because of his mother. His rage and his anger is only towards his mother. So what does he do? You guessed it. He unalives his mother in her sleep. And just like the others, he did not leave her body intact. Then he calls her best friend, and the best friend comes over and he unalives her as well. So at this point, Kemper goes out and actually picks up another 2 women, but at this point decides he doesn't even want to kill them. He lets them go. And it's at this point that he literally calls the police and turns himself in, admits to being the co-ed killer. And he tells them, and I quote, "Pick me up and put me in jail now or I will kill more." So that was in 1973, and he has been in prison ever since. He is still alive. And on all accounts, he is a model inmate. And he's never even picked up so much as a disciplinary report. Which is good for everybody who comes in contact with him. Because again, you're telling me these people could stop this man.
When Ed Kemper gets released from the mental hospital as a now adult 6'9" mountain, it's a slightly different California than he remembered. Significant time frame of when he was locked up, 63 to 69, you have an entire culture shift. You got hippies, but let me tell you, there was not a single ounce of peace or love in that man's heart. He had this dream of becoming a cop. He tried, they told him he was too big. He literally couldn't fit anywhere, had no clue where he fit into society, couldn't function at all, and especially around women. It also just didn't help that he moved back in with Mom, who reminded him of that every day. Eventually develops this little hobby of picking up hitchhikers, which allows him to work on his social skills. He's also getting a high off of just doing favors for people, but of course, it's also intertwined with his dark fantasies. I always find his first 2 co-ed murders the most interesting to me because, going back to that self-awareness thing again, he basically completely freaks out, realizing, oh my god, this is absolutely insane what I'm doing. It wasn't like the movies, it was taking a lot longer than he thought it would take, and the 2 female co-eds just had a lot more life in them than he anticipated. As the story of the co-ed killer starts to get out and is all over the news, he still continues and is fully able to coax women into his car because he just had this calming effect on people. One thing that always stands out to me is he would purposely check his watch in front of the women and would be like, gee, I don't know if I have enough time. What the hell, hop in. The fact he had a friendly relationship with police, just another wrinkle to this. As he's abducting these women, he's going down to his local diner and shooting the shit with cops and just trying to get a gauge on where they are in the case. And even with him doing that, he was never suspected as being this guy that was picking up these hitchhikers. So now as he kind of thinks he's got everything under control, at the same time, he's being driven insane staying at home by his mom, and he's kind of going off the rails. And he comes to the decision that it just all has to end with her. Now, his mom deserves some of the blame for how he turned out, but she didn't deserve that. You're welcome to look up what Ed did to his mom if you don't already know, but let's just say getting even would be the fucking understatement of the century. With his mom now gone, he did another thing that no other serial killer does. He gave himself up. If you're blind, or you've just been listening to audiobooks since before it was cool, there is a small chance that you have listened to the soothing sounds of narrator of over 500 books for the blind, Edmund Kemper.
Behave yourself, R2. 3PO was shocked. You're going to get us into trouble.
Alright guys, here we are, University of Santa Cruz. This is where Ed Kemper would pick up a lot of his victims. His mom actually worked here, and Ed would ask her, hey, would you set me up on dates with any of the girls from campus? She then proceeded to tell him no, she would never do that to any of them, and then berated him with insults. And that night, we believe, was his first kill. So, yeah, this is kind of where his killing all started. I just want to note, everybody, no wonder Ed Kemper freaking likes this campus so much. It is way out in the woods, it's huge, and there's a lot of hiding places out here, so it makes sense why he picked up his victims here. Yeah, he dumped all the bodies on Highway 1, but still, like, this place is crazy desolate.
So can we talk about the justice system? This is not going to be a history lesson. We all know who Edmund Kemper was and what he did. But there were so many misses. Let me tell you. So let's get the basics. He was born December 1948, and his IQ was said to be at least 145. Now let's start at the top. His mama sent him to live with his grandparents, and with the weapon that his grandfather gave him, he shot his grandma. What in the hell? Then he said, his words, he didn't want his grandfather to see his grandmother that way, so he went ahead and took his ass out too. What in the hell? Then he called his mama and told her what he did. Then sis was like, okay, call the police. You know what Ed did? He called them. They took his ass to jail. But we're not done. Part 2. Ed is down to the jail. He was diagnosed with multiple mental health issues. But wait a minute. I think it was around this time that his IQ was tested. For the first time, the score was 136. Still very intelligent, but coupled with his already diagnosed mental issues, they decided that it was best for him to go to a maximum security mental health facility for the murders. Okay. Ed knew he was smart, and he was said later to have learned a lot from the offenders that he was in jail with in the mental institution. And he taught them, in exchange, how to beat the mental test, like to diagnose you with mental issues. But we're still not done. See you in the next part. Part 3. So because he's well known, and just about every true crime personality has done their own rendition of his story, when I was looking into it, I was like, Ed was talking, but we weren't really listening. He said he killed his grandparents because he wanted to see how it felt. But he was released at the age of 21 and was thought to not be a threat to society. So this was me. If 1 + 1 is 2 and 2 + 2 is 4, Ed Kemper ass ain't crazy. He just played crazy. And they believed him, let his ass out, and he ran around here being 6'9" tall, bothering and killing everybody. I'm done.
Parents, because he was bored? At the age of 15, Kemper ran away from his mother to avoid her abuse and decided to track down his father. But he was rejected by him also. Instead, he was shipped off to live with his paternal grandparents on their farm in the California mountains. Kemper said he lived in complete isolation with his senile grandfather and my grandmother, who thought she had more balls than any man and was constantly emasculating my grandfather and me to prove it. He added, I couldn't please her. It was like being in jail. I became a walking time bomb, and I finally blew. It was like that the second time with my mother. In August 1964, Kemper shot his grandmother in her kitchen with a hunting rifle, and when his grandfather returned, he was also shot and killed him. Panicked, Kemper then called his mother, and she urged him to tell the police. When the police arrived, he told them, I just wanted to see how it felt to shoot grandmother. Fact number 3, he was one of the 3 killers in Santa Cruz at the time.
Ed Kemper, infamously known as the Co-Ed Killer, is one of America's most notorious serial killers. His gruesome crimes began in the early 1970s, where he preyed on young women, luring them with his charm and intelligence. Standing at 6'9", he was physically intimidating, but it was his twisted mind that truly terrified. Kemper's first murders were committed in 1964, when he killed his grandparents at just 15 years old. After being incarcerated and released, he turned to hunting down co-eds, committing a series of brutal killings that involved not just murder, but also necrophilia and dismemberment. He would often pick up his victims by offering them rides, only to later take their lives in horrifying ways. Kemper's disturbing interviews reveal a man who is both self-aware and devoid of remorse, explaining his actions with chilling calmness. His ability to articulate his thoughts and feelings has fascinated criminologists and the public alike. The duality of his persona, a mild-mannered man by day, a brutal killer by night, makes him a case study in the complexities of human psychology. Ed Kemper's legacy is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can reside within a seemingly ordinary individual.
I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun. It was April. For 2 months I hadn't killed. And I said, it's not going to happen to any more girls. It's got to stay between me and my mother. And I can't get away from her. We're still fighting. She's still belittling me. I'm like a puppet on a string, and I entertain her. She knows all my buttons, and I dance like a puppet with that pain. And it had even gotten physical, to where I had physically grabbed her and thrown her onto her bed, trying to emphasize a point that I was threatening to kill her. So here I pick up these 2 young ladies in Berkeley, on Ashby Avenue. One has flowers in her hand, petite little dolls. They're in granny dresses, and they're hitchhiking, a couple of real experts. I want to see how together I am, if I can resist this temptation. And they get in my car. They want to go one way. I know they need to go the other. If they go the way they're insisting on, we're headed right back out to where the first 2 co-eds were murdered. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, all I got to do is relax. I've got the gun in the car. The same one I've been doing it with. I insisted. As gently as I could, I took them where they needed to go, to their college. That was 1 week before I murdered my mother. I came out of her vagina. See? Came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It was one of our arguments. I cut off her head, and I humiliated her corpse. So there, you know? A 6 young woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
grandmother and her daughter-in-law, your mother, were two women very important in your life, and you killed them both.
Okay, we're driving along, and I'm looking at this young lady in the rearview mirror. And I look back at it years later, and I'm saying, she kept looking me back, too, right in the eyeballs. I'm wearing dark glasses, but they're not totally dark. And I'm realizing now that she could see me looking at her, and she was looking right back at me. And instead of saying something to me, like, what are you looking at, or hey, maybe you ought to drop us off, or something like that, she just kept looking back at me. And I'm looking at her, and she keeps looking at me. I'm thinking she's playing this little game. It's not really teasing, so to speak. It's just this little psychological game back and forth that men and women do sometimes. The young girl in the front, Anita, was at first I did, yeah, but that stopped. Because at first I was hoping I could get a vicarious thrill out of seeing those pictures and say, well, this will be satisfying enough. Two people died, that's it. It doesn't have to go past that. And I'll see why I don't want to do it again. Those pictures lasted about 2 weeks. And I come back from work 2 days after I did it. I mean, Tuesday, right? Sunday it happened. Monday I took off, took CTO, compensatory time off, and I go back to work Tuesday. I come home from work Tuesday, a hard day at work. I'm feeling like I used to feel. I've done some work that day. I've accomplished something. And I'm saying, I can't believe I did this stuff. I must have dreamed it. This must be some kind of weird dream. And I come back to the house, I pick up the corner of the carpet, I pull out these pictures in an envelope, and I say, geez, I don't believe this. Now I gotta believe it. That really happened. See, I was that distanced from what I had done just 1 day later that I couldn't believe, or 2 physical days later, that I couldn't believe that I'd actually done that. After 2 weeks, I couldn't handle the reality of those pictures. Now I've read where guys have hung criminals, like in the Old West, and tanned the guy's hide and made a pair of shoes out of it. The doctor did, the city doctor, and took his skull and made an inkwell out of it with gold hinges on it for the pens. This was some notorious criminal, right? I said, gee, that's kind of grisly.
Why did you decapitate the body? Was it a kind of way to replace the sexual experience?
I think so. I think so. And it was like a trophy thing. It was, it's disgusting, but it was kind of a power trip. I always felt intimidated by women. I always felt overpowered by them as a kid. When I stopped making it as an adult, when I was doing great socially on the job base, making friends locally, having buddies and stuff, and have a pizza and a beer and stuff, no problem. I got friends for that. But making women friends was real tough. And battling my mom on the one hand and trying to make friends with women is a little bit of a problem because there was a lot of crossover there. And she was opening a lot of old wounds, pushing a lot of buttons, and she liked to watch me twitch. That's the only thing I can say. There was a little bit of sadism in her, too. And I hated her for that, because she was the one person in the world that could push every button I had, because she knew where they all were. And as I got better and smarter and better at what I did, and more involved in the public, and I'd say a better all-around adult, it's as if she were offended by that. And you may ask why, okay? Just look at the vanity of being a mother. She raised me, had a horrible time from day one as an individual parent raising me. I'll fight every day, right? The state comes in, she's a proud woman. She's a vain woman, and she was real proud, and she was raised that way. The state of California takes her son away from her and says, we are taking your son away because you must be an unfit mother. He's a murderer. He killed people. I'm trying to look at it from her point of view. If you could raise your son right, you wouldn't kill people, lady. We're taking him. And in a mere 5.5 years of bureaucracy, and she had no respect for California bureaucracy. She used to make jokes about that all the time. About if you want to waste the rest of your life doing nothing, apply for something, and through a bureaucratic process in California. Those bureaucrats took me away from her. And in 5.5 years of filter farbing around, they hand me back, and now I'm an overachiever. Huh? Good-looking, strapping young man, wants to go work, wants to make a living for himself, wants to be sociable. He isn't paranoid and pulling away from people anymore. That shocked the hell out of her. It had to have. She didn't share that with me, but I'm saying that must have really tore at her and made her feel all the more a bad mother. So instead of, I have a feeling she felt she couldn't be a part of that healing process So she attacked it because I became a cancer in her life. I reminded her every day what a rotten mother she must be. And I'm not saying she was. She must be a rotten mother. Look what the state did for me, and she couldn't. They couldn't have insulted her any worse if they'd have tried, and they didn't try. They were trying to solve a problem by paroling me to her so I'll stay out of trouble and go be a good adult and pay taxes. And guess what? That's the one furnace they should not have put me back in because, hey, she had no help on the other end to sort through her feelings, and she was too proud to get help. So we fought, and that's the only excuse I can make in my head. She's not here to discuss it. That's the only thing the balance I can put in there is that I must have been a terrible accuser to her, a terrible accusal of what a rotten mother she was, or she could have done better. Even the state raised me with apparent ease. They locked me away in an adult institution where I should have been raped, and I should have been mutilated, and I should have been screwed over and been like Charlie Manson when he was raped as a kid in prison, in youth authority. You know? And then he starts raping other people, and he's a leader of that stuff, and then he's manipulating people.
Oh my God, we shouldn't have gotten this guy's car, and they're getting all puckered up, and I said, just bear with me, be patient. If I'm wrong, we'll get on the turnoff, we'll go right back around, we'll take you out your way. But I know it's the next turnoff or the one past it this way, downtown. Trust me, please. And they're sitting like this, and they quit talking to me, and they're looking straight ahead. And I'm saying, oh, shit. Guns under the seat, so all just, whoa. I get up on the freeway, 2 turnoffs, Mills College. In fact, the next one said Mills College, next exit, But they're not relaxing or nothing. I had refused to take them the way they wanted to go and pushed it the other way. That's what scared them. But they didn't know the irony of it was if I'd have gone along their way, I'd have probably said, yeah, well, I'll just follow on through and oops, we'll do it one more time. How do you oops human lives? I don't know those 2 young ladies, and I don't know where they are today, and I don't know that they remember that little incident. But when I drove them to Mills College, inside of Mills College, to their college entrance, right to the building, to the dormitory, and they got out of that car and flew up those stairs, never even looked back. I'll bet they quit hitchhiking quite so casually after that. But you know what? I don't think they know to this day how close that came. And the irony of it is, just to shut them up and not have them freak out, I could have gone the other way. But by that time, then we're going back up that groove of what I had done already and what I was familiar with. See what I'm saying? And that day, I knew I could not stop doing it. I knew I had no control over it. I had just minimal controls. But mainly, I could not stop it. It was going to happen again. And between that weekend day, it was a Saturday or a Sunday, I think it was a Sunday, between that Sunday and the next Saturday, all that week I was working, I built an image in my head, my mother's going to die. I'm going to kill her, and I am going to go to it with the police, and we're going to hold court in the street, and they're going to pound me in the ground, and they can fill in the blanks because I don't want to be around to explain it. All that week, it was a conviction that just got deeper and deeper in me. I got more and more morose. I got less and less talkative at work. I got more somber about what I was doing because almost every minute of every day, I knew that's what that next weekend held. That was Easter weekend, right? Worked half a day Friday, went back to Santa Cruz Friday afternoon, was drinking Friday night, fell asleep before my mother came home, woke up after she came home. And the last words we had were an argument, right? I walked into her bedroom to chat with her. In the back of my mind, I'm not going to try and blame her for dying. I'm just saying, in the back of my mind, I was hoping she could say something, or I'd say something that could stop all of this shit. A little childish hope in the back of my mind that she'd say something and I'd play it off.
But you still went with a hammer.
Wait a minute. You're wiping out the moment here. I went in there hoping I could stop this stuff in the back of my head. I'm not planning on it. I'm just a little hope. And the first thing out of her mouth was she's reading this book and she just flaps it down on herself and says, oh my God, I suppose now you want to stay up all night and talk. That was one of her favorite peeves when I come in late at night and want to talk. And once in a long while, like that night, I spun on my heel and said, nope, good night, and walked back out. And she knew she'd hurt my feelings, and the next day we'd sit down and talk. Except I knew that we weren't going to talk. And I went back in my room and I laid down. I did not go to sleep. I laid there for 3 hours, 4 hours, till 4 or 5 in the morning, a little after 5 in the morning, and walked in there with a hammer and caved in the side of her head. and cut her throat.